Hey guys, it's me Kevin, and I'm back with another sports video for the first time since last September, and today I'm going to be doing my very first A-League video. Before the season started, I predict the A-League ladder to look something like this: Sydney FC, Melbourne City, Perth Glory, Melbourne Victory, Western United, Western Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Newcastle, Wellington, and Central Coast. We're midway through the season now. Some of those predictions I'm making are starting to take shape, whilst others are making me look really dumb. And there's others which, just as I thought it'd make me look stupid, it is starting to probably come true. Today I'm going to go through every team and what the season looks like for them, and how I think they'll fare throughout the rest of the season. I didn't expect much from Adelaide, given that Craig Goodwin and Isaiah Sanchez departed the club. It was already a low-scoring club, and I didn't think much about the coach Jan Verbeek. At one point, however, they had won 4 straight games, which started with a win against Newcastle and ended with a win against Victory, and then they beat Newcastle 2 weeks later, so there was 1 loss in that, so basically 5 and 6. However, their last 3 games, they've lost to the Mariners, they've lost to Western Sydney, and they've lost to Sydney. Now, the ones to Western Sydney and Central Coast in particular have been a bit of a concern. They lost to the Wanderers, who had not won a game since round 3, so basically they had lost 8 straight games. Whilst the Mariners, they were only the 3rd team to have lost to the Mariners. Now, they've done okay, but what I'm concerned with Adelaide is 2 things. They're very inconsistent, and that they're flat track bullies. Apart from their win against Melbourne Victory, who even at that time, the Victory were out of form, I can't really see any games where it was an impressive victory, apart from the FFA Cup final, but that's different. That's a different league. They beat Newcastle, only just beat Brisbane, and even the win against Newcastle, whilst other teams have been slaughtered by them, Adelaide only just got over the line with Newcastle, which does concern me. Oh, they beat the Mariners as well. And I haven't really seen a good team that Adelaide has beaten. So, overall, I don't think Adelaide will be making the finals. They seem too inconsistent. They can perform if they want to, but inconsistency will cost them in the end. Next up is the Brisbane Roar, who were the leakiest side of the competition last year with 72 goals conceded. This year, under Fowler, it seems like the Roar have defended a lot better. I mean, they've, apart from that horror show against Sydney FC where they lost 5-1, they've only conceded more than 1 goal in a game twice. And one of those was a win anyway. So, yeah, it seems like they've improved defensively. What is a concern for Brisbane Roar, however, is their attack. Apart from that Roy O'Donovan equaliser against the Glory in round 1, they did not score till round 6. And one player I thought was going to improve was Roy O'Donovan. Apart from the round 1 win, draw against the Glory, that round 6 game, and a goal in round 8, I haven't seen Roy O'Donovan score much, and I thought that Brisbane were going to improve due to him. I thought he was going to be their leading goal scorer, and as it turns out, that isn't the case right now. Brisbane Roar, if they get their attacking woes fixed, they could challenge for the finals, but until then, until Roy O'Donovan and his lineup get into an attacking gear, I don't see Brisbane Roar making the finals. Although it is to be said, under Robbie Fowler, they have improved from last season. Another team which has been very inconsistent is Central Coast, which is better than last year where they had won 1 game in 20. Since Alan Stajic has come, the Mariners won 2 of their remaining 6 games, whilst also winning another 3 games this season, an improvement from last season, as well as drawing a game. It does seem that the Mariners tend to win whenever they're playing better as a defensive unit. I mean, they held Glory scoreless for 45 minutes when they had all the possession in their win against Glory back in round 4. They held Sydney to just 1 goal after they came off a 5-1 win against Brisbane the previous week. And they also held Western United scoreless in their win against the United, as well as also beating Adelaide by holding them to just 1 goal. However, some of their losses have been big. Like their 3-0 loss to the Glory, their 3-1 loss to Adelaide, just to name a few, whilst also relinquishing a 1-goal lead against the Wanderers late to concede and lose the game. So it seems like the Mariners, they tend to play better when they're defending better. Their attack seems alright, and Daniel Da Silva seems to be doing a pretty good job along some of the other players that they've got. But consistency is my issue for the Mariners. Until they can defend well week in, week out, I don't think... I do think the Mariners can challenge for the top 6. Don't get me wrong about that. But in my opinion, there are other teams which are better than the Mariners as of current. From one inconsistent team to another, Melbourne City has been a hell of a story this season. They started off with a 0-0 draw against Melbourne in round 1, winning their next 4 games. And then a win-loss streak started, which started with a loss to Brisbane. And that was despite leading 3-1 in the 65th minute to lose 4-3 at the end. And apart from that, they've also got absolutely slaughtered to Glory 3-0, relinquished a 1-goal lead and lost to Sydney 2-1, whilst also losing to bitter rivals Melbourne Victory, who are only just starting to get their season going at the time. They have shown flashes of brilliance, having beaten Newcastle 4-0, although it's Newcastle at the moment, and having beaten United twice, but my concern is whether they can win in big games. They lost an FFA Cup final to Adelaide, and they've lost to Perth, Sydney and Melbourne, 2 of them who are top 3 contenders, and Melbourne, the dark horse. That really concerns me about their consistency. And Jamie McLaren, I feel that if he slacks off, the whole Melbourne City falls to pieces. So I think if Melbourne City are to make the top 2, then Jamie McLaren has to keep scoring. Otherwise, it's basically that they'll lose their top 2 spot. Melbourne Victory have been interesting. At the start of the season, they were relatively inconsistent, having beaten the Raw, but then losing and drawing other games, including getting absolutely ripped apart 3-1 to Adelaide. And then they found themselves on the bottom of the ladder after round 9, losing to Western United, despite everyone thinking they'd kick-started their season against the Glory. Although that would eventually come handy as they'll draw to Wellington and then win against both Melbourne City and rip apart Newcastle. I thought Melbourne Victory were going to be a top 4 side. I know they lost Honda and Antonis, but I thought getting in Cruz and the other guy, Naboo, to add to the forward line with Toivonen, I thought it'd be one of the most dangerous attacking combos in the competition. And as of the last 2 weeks, that prediction has come true, but it's only been the last 2 weeks. In my opinion, Melbourne Victory, if they continue the way they've been going in the last 2 weeks, I do think they can jump into the top 6. And they might challenge for the championship, although having to try and win it from away games is always hard. So, honestly, I feel it's a season wasted for Melbourne, but there's still life in their season. Next up is the Newcastle Jets. The Jets are crashing. It's a crash landing alert. A disaster is looming. Ernie Merrick, the pilot of the Newcastle Jets, has just been booted off. Just been sacked after massive losses against Perth Glory, 6-2 thrashing, as well as losses to Melbourne City and Melbourne Victory in excess of 4 goals. And they couldn't even win against Brisbane. A 1-1 draw they had to settle for. And yes, Ernie Merrick has just been sacked, surprisingly. You thought the most experienced coach would have stuck around during the tough times at Newcastle. Going into the season, Newcastle's best squad was already the weakest side in the competition, given that O'Donovan, Georgievski, Chatness, Naboo all left the club. And then an injury to Wes Houlihan in an FFA Cup final, along with losses to Nigel Boogaard and Herrero through injury earlier on in the season, who was keeping their season alive early on, has basically seen the Newcastle Jets field an inexperienced side with probably the worst goalie in the A-League. I mean, come on. I mean, I know Perth Glory were playing well that day, but I mean, some of the goals that they leaked, Perth Glory would not have scored some of those goals against any other team, to be honest with you. Particularly the long-range ones. But, Yeah, and that's the concern. Very poor defensively, and their goalkeeping I'm looking at here. And they're fielding an inexperienced side. And basically, I think until those three players come back, I do think Newcastle are going to keep losing badly. And even when they come back, they're going to still struggle, don't get me wrong. I mean, the only thing they're probably looking at is probably see if they can try and do anything, try and get off the bottom. But apart from that, I think Newcastle are the favourites to be wooden spooners, and they're a distant last, and they're the only team in the A-League I can say at the moment they will not be making the finals. Next off is Perth Glory, who their season has really been a story of two tales. It started off with Perth Glory on the bottom of the ladder after 8 rounds, having lost to Sydney, Melbourne, who they were out of form, and the Mariners at home. Yeah, the Mariners. And then they also had 1-1 draws to struggling Brisbane and Newcastle, as well as Western United were playing their first ever match at home. Their only win at that point was against Wellington Phoenix. And that was probably the hardest one because they don't play well in Wellington usually. So that confused many people, including myself. And that disappointed many people because at the start of the season, Perth Glory, well, they were expected to be the second best side in the competition after Sydney FC because Fornaroli, Iconometers and Castro all in the attack. I mean, that's probably the most dangerous attack combination in the competition. And they weren't doing an awful lot. And everyone was lamenting them, rightfully so. And then all of a sudden, it's just flipped in December, having smashed top second place Melbourne City 3-0. They put pressure on Marcus Babbel, winning 2-0, then smashed Newcastle 6-2 in one of the highest scoring games in A-League history, and then beat the Mariners 3-0 as well. And in December alone, Perth Glory actually did better than Sydney FC, outscoring their opponents 14-2 compared to Sydney's 10-4. So, we were December's best side in the competition. I do think Perth Glory will continue to rise because it's looking like the sort of side that won the premiership last year. And as I said, well, not really because I didn't make a video in the off-season, but as I thought in the off-season, Glory will be hungry to get back and win the championship. They might be out of contention for the premiership given Sydney's ridiculous stunts this year. But I think Perth Glory, if they keep winning and winning, they could. They're the team that could challenge Sydney the most for the championship. But they have to keep winning. They can't afford to lose or draw much more because they kind of stuffed up the start. Well, they don't call them the Sky Blues for no reason. Sydney FC, that's where they are at the moment. 9 points clear on top of the ladder, half a hand on the premiership already, and you can pretty much safely assume that Sydney FC is going to win the premiership. Bet $1 million on it, you'll come out $10 million richer. To be honest, it's not unexpected though. I mean, when you have players like Lafondre, Barbarouses, Wilkinson, Bratton, Grants, Redmayne, all those players, when you have all those players, you didn't really expect much from Sydney apart from basically winning all their games. They've only lost and drawn 1 game each and they've won the rest of them. Have a perfect record at home. And to be honest, I think they should just stay at Jubilee Oval because they seem to have improved, in my opinion, since gone Jubilee Oval, both financially and on field. However, don't assume they'll win the championship. Even though they're the heavy favourites to win the championship, it only takes one stuffed up game. Wellington, I'm looking at you. And that's it. Sydney FC are out of the contention because there's no double chances. The only other way Sydney FC won't win the premiership is if a huge injury run happens. But even then, they've got a lot of depth. So I think Sydney will be winning the premiership. Championship, not certain, but they're still the favourites. But look at Richmond in the AFL in 2018. Best team of the season, did they win the premiership? No, they got smashed by Collingwood in the prelim, and then West Coast ended up winning, despite everyone thinking Richmond was going to win. So, don't think the A-League season's over just yet. Well, Wellington Phoenix have been quite similar to the Perth Glory. They lost 4 straight games to start the season, which was understandable considering they had lost their coach Mark Rudin, plus who they lose? Krishna, Williams, Durante, Burgess, Filippo sign. So basically, the first 4 rounds was mostly gelling and a rebuild under Ufuk Talay. But he has done a massive job at turning the club around in recent weeks, having gone undefeated for 8 straight weeks, winning 5 of those, and they've beaten teams such as the Wanderers, United. Well, I'm not sure if the Wanderers are really that fabulous to beat, but they've beaten them, United. They ended Adelaide's 4-game winning streak, which was kind of impressive. So yeah, I think Wellington are looking one of the best sides in the competition right now, and looking one of the best sides to win the championship, and probably stop Sydney FC from winning it. I don't think they'll make the top 3, however, for one reason. Ball and Rufer have been injured. But yeah, it seems like when you add them two back to who they've got Delvin, Davila, Marinkovic is actually doing a pretty good job in the goals. When you consider all these players, Taylor, when you consider all these players stepping up, and when you consider that Rufer and Ball will come back soon, in the final rounds, Wellington are going to go on a blast off. I'm telling you, they're going to win a lot of games at the end of the season as well. I think they'll have a dry patch in the next few weeks due to Ball and Rufer's injury, but the Phoenix will storm into the top 4 to finish the season. Western Sydney Wanderers, Marcus Babbel. Take a fucking look at your squad and your ground. I mean, look at their squad. They've got Georgievski, Moller, Duke, who just recently debuted for the Socceroos. They've got Meyer. They've got all those players. Lopa, who's probably the best goalkeeper at the moment. They've got all those players, and yet they're still losing, which is confusing. And they won the first 3 games of the season. The only team, and they're the only teams that have been in Sydney FC right now, as it stands. No other team has done it. Wellington were the closest, but a Davila strike. And they were undefeated after 4 rounds, and then lost 5 straight games. How? Okay, I will give some lenience here. The Wanderers did have some refereeing decisions go against them, but just as it looked like Western Sydney were taking a turn for the better, they lose 1-2 to Brisbane at home. So, yes, you could make some excuses with poor refereeing decisions, but at the same time, the Wanderers, they're underachieving, in my opinion. Look, if they sack Babbel, or if Babbel can get his act together and actually make the most out of his squad, they could make the top 6. They could make probably even top 4, but they'd have to run for it, really. But yeah, I can't see the Wanderers doing much at the rate they're going right now. I don't think they'll be making the finals right now unless they do something drastic. And lastly, the new guys, Western United. We were expecting quite a lot of them, considering they had players such as Berisha, Cone, McDonald, in the goals, Filippo, and then players like Burgess and Durante. They had, the list goes on. And then coached by Mark Rutter, who single-handedly turned around the Phoenix last year. Everyone was suspecting that they would be high on the ladder, and for the most part, they have been meeting that expectation. To be honest, if it was an experienced side, I would say that they should be second on the ladder right now. But the only thing is, first-year blues, it can affect them, and trying to get used to the competition. There's going to be some inconsistency between the players, and particularly that they most of them hadn't been part of the same team coming into this year, so they had to gel together. So yeah, obviously for Western United, they have had their challenges, and they've also been without a home. So they have had their challenges this season. Nonetheless, for the most part, they have been winning games, and I think they will be in the top 6. They've peaked at 3rd, but are currently 5th at the moment. Could they win a few finals? They could. To be honest, it's hard to get a read on a new team, Western United, but I think at the way they're going with their performances at the moment, they should make the top 6 with ease. So, to recap, this is what I think the ladder will look like at the end of the year. Sydney FC at the top of the ladder, and then Perth Glory, Melbourne City, Wellington Phoenix, Western United, Melbourne Victory, and then in the bottom 5, Adelaide, Western Sydney, Central Coast, Brisbane, and then Newcastle. So, what did you think about my first A-League video? Comment down below what more types of videos I should do, and comment what you thought of this video. Please subscribe and give it a thumbs up for more reviews by me and more talk videos. And check out some of my other videos and share this with other people. Make this channel grow, and I'm going to be uploading a lot more content this year. Both AFL, different kinds of sports, gaming, all that sort of thing. So, yeah, and I might be inviting a few more members, maybe, hopefully. So, yeah, try and make this channel grow, and I'll see you next week.